a interesting dart manipulation here that I found in the 1960s or 50s pattern making book. 50s and 60s pattern making books are really good for interesting dart manipulation in general. And actually in the Helen Armstrong pattern making book, there's some really quirky dart manipulation as well. So I just thought I'd show you one out of the book. And it's this one here, and it looks, especially in this fabric, because this fabric's really stiff, it's a lot stiffer than we usually get for some reason. And yeah, so we've taken, the way that this works as well is that you can't, because if you brought this point back, because this is actually bust point here and here, if you brought that back to there, it would just be a bit odd. So in this instance, the dart goes all the way to the bust point, but it does mean though that these darts will either fit somebody or they won't. So to really work, they have to line up perfectly with the bust point of the person who's wearing them, and because it does create such a definite point going right to the bust point there. But the thing is, you could, after doing this, I was thinking, oh, okay, well, since I've done this, then I could potentially have this, rather than having the seam here, I could have had the seam, up here, which would get rid of that, and then I thought, oh, and then I could, have buttons down there or something, or a zip, or then I could, even open this up to maybe put some gathers in there or something. So so this sort of thing, once you do one thing, then you can play around with that, and it leads on to something else as well. And that's where, using a pattern making book, it shows you how to do it, but it also gives you like a point at which you can go forward from and create something that's a lot more original than just finding a picture of a garment and copying that. You're working with the technique. Okay. So to start with, what we're going to do is we're going to draw in our line. So we have to draw in our line across to the center front. And now we're going to pivot. Both of these darts are going to be pivoted into this line here. Okay, so the bottom section is what's going to change. So if we start here on the fold and draw up around the neck, the shoulder, the armhole, and draw down to the dart there, and just make sure that you mark in your balance notch for your armhole. Okay, so we're going to go from the bust point, so we need to swing from the bust point, and we're going to close our dart into the side seam. Okay, just by swinging that around so this matches now. Now we have to go, this section doesn't change and the side doesn't change here. So we're going to go down to the side arm of our dart, and then we're going to pivot again. So we want to get rid of this dart this time. So we're going to pivot that around here, see at the bottom, swing that around until the dart arms match. And then we can draw in our center front here up to our dart point there. Now we need our bust point, so I can just mark that in there, and we take this away. So we'll just straighten our side seam up, which is a little kink, so just get rid of that. And now we're going to draw in the lines. So these lines here, so even though we started with this amount of darting here and this amount of darting here, because we're making the darts shorter, because originally the dart was this long, now the dart's only this long, it's the amount of darting is sort of like around here, so it's that amount there, like plus that amount there, which is why when you add that and that together, you get a smaller amount. So the amount of darting is the same, and it'll produce exactly the same fit in the garment, but because the dart's shorter, it means that it'll be the dart will be a little bit smaller. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so we're going to have, you'll see from our original, this top section here is on the fold, but we couldn't have that on the fold and this on the fold. So obviously this is on our center front, which we can have on the fold, but we can't have that on the fold and that on the fold. So one of these two has to have a seam allowance added onto it. And in this instance, it's the seam allowance we've added is to the center front there. Okay, so, and we need to write in center front fold. And we also, because these two lines here are the stitch lines, we need to add seam allowances onto them as well. So if I take this off and show you, you can see here that this is actually a seam allowance. That just gets smaller, so it starts as a 1 centimeter seam allowance, or 0.5 at half scale, and then stays that same width until where the dart starts to turn into a fold, and then goes back to nothing at the bust point. So you can see that there. So that's our top section there. This line here is this line here, so we need to add a seam allowance that way. And then if we do it this way here, this is our seam allowance that we've added here. Now we need to add a seam allowance from the stitch line up this way. So all we need to do that is draw that line in. So one centimeter and 1 centimeter, or 0.5 in half scale here. And then we also need our dart to stop at the bust point. So we're going to put in, and because you can sort of, it's easy to lose track from here to there, even though it's not a very big distance. Sometimes the dart could stop here or it could stop there. So we want to stop straight on the bust point. So we need to put a drill hole half a centimeter back in half scale here, or 1 centimeter back from the bust point in full scale. Okay, and then that's when we end up with our pattern piece that's like this, so full across the top, and then with a seam holding it together at the bottom there. And then obviously adding our seam allowances around here, depending on the style of the garment that you're making. So there's our cool dart manipulation.